The thing I've learned over time is you can get really overwhelmed with content and have this recency bias about everything, right? So it's like the last thing you read is what kind of shapes how you think about things. And I found myself falling into that trap a lot. And over time, I was like, you know what? It's so important to just have some pillars of beliefs, kind of values, can come back to and are likely to be timeless and, more enduring. Yeah, it's gotten to be more about that. So even if I read something, I'll be I put it through the lens of okay, how does this actually support some of the pillars that we have versus going to a whiplash of now HBR says this is the way you should talk to customers or whatever, and then thinking that's the right way. And I think it's really having confidence in, the belief systems and also the learnings that you've developed over a longer period of time.
Welcome to the Marketing Factor podcast. I'm your host, Austin Dandridge, the CEO of Cobble Hill. Today, I'm particularly excited about my guest, Peter Kang, the co-founder and chairman of Barrel Holdings, whose weekly newsletter and insights have personally shaped my understanding of agency leadership. Through his portfolio of agencies, including Barrel, BX Studio, Vaulted Oak, Bolster, Prima Mode, and Catalog, Peter has developed a unique lens into what makes e-commerce and business operations truly exceptional. Today, we'll uncover the overlooked opportunities and systematic approaches that separate brands and businesses from the rest. Peter, thanks so much for agreeing to be on the Marketing Factor.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Austin.
We haven't formally met, but we've exchanged emails, and I'm always hip to read your weekly newsletter as soon as it hits my inbox because you share such great insights. And I think the most deep thing that you share is kind of what you have been reading recently. So what have you been reading this past week in terms of, you're always reading a book. What book are you reading right now?
Oh my goodness. All right. So this, I don't know if this is embarrassing or kind of fun. All right. So I recently repicked up, so I don't know if you recall, there's an Apple TV had this show called Drops of God, which is like a show about wine, right? It's like a very, dramatic show about wine. But I learned that book was based on a Japanese manga series, the comics. I was maybe I should just check that out. And so it's this crazy many volume comic book series about wine, and it goes deep. It's super nerdy. You learn a lot about wine reading that, and it's just in comic book format, and it's kind of fun and interesting. And I had started reading it a couple of years ago, and or a year ago, and then I kind of left off, but I picked up on it recently again because I'm this it's around Thanksgiving. I'm trying to pick my wines for Thanksgiving and stuff, so I was I might just go check this out again. And it's been really fun reading, honestly. You learn way more than you would just if you pick up a, wine guide book or something like that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that's impressive is somehow you convince the rest of the leadership at Barrel Holdings to get behind the book too. And then you guys, it sounds like you come together and you discuss that book on a quarterly basis. How did that process start? I'm sure there is everyone a reader, or did that take some encouragement?
Yeah. So, I mean, after, so earlier this year, Sewik and I, my co-founder, stepped out of the day-to-day of Barrel. So we've kind of, we're going to evolve that practice, but let's say the prior 7 years, before that, when it was myself, Sewik, and then Lucas and Wes, who are partners in the Barrel agency business. The four of us every quarter, we would have a book or two that we read together, and then come together to discuss every quarter. And so that was a really good practice. And read over 40 books. Just a lot of things on business, a lot of memoirs by different entrepreneurs, as well as personal growth development books. So, those are kind of things that we really, took a lot of time to, digest, and then come prepared with our thoughts and some of the things that stood out to us, so we could discuss themes. So that those were really transformational experiences, and we ended up really mind melding into this like you know common language that we developed amongst ourselves. And so that runs really deep, and it's some of the best experiences we had were in being able to read together and then talk about it together.
Yeah, it seems pretty powerful to be able to kind of have those discussions too around uh, a set framework or something like that. And it's something that I read a lot, and but I don't necessarily. I co-founded Cobble Hill with my wife, and we run the agency together. But and she's a huge reader. She's a copywriter and everything. But we don't necessarily find her. She doesn't read much nonfiction, so we don't share the same. But we read a lot of the same fiction books. But she's not that into nonfiction. So our discussions around books are more from like novels and stuff like that. So it's interesting to be able to kind of come together around that. And I find a lot of, you know, uh, a lot of insight in novels too that I think can be applied to business as well.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I try to get a good mix of fiction and nonfiction as much as I can. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
So tell me about you started Barrel in
2006. Yeah, 2006. Yeah, so a long, long time ago. Yeah, so I had graduated from Columbia. I met my co-founder there. We had been making websites together on the side. I'm a couple years older, so I went and got a job in investment banking. Worked at Lehman Brothers, and then all through all through that, we were still meeting up, Sihuk and I, making websites on weekends. And I kind of knew, like, right as I started finance, I was like, I don't want to do this longer than a year probably. And the first chance I got, which was like right after I got my bonus, my first year bonus. Like I just, yeah, I skipped out and was like, let's start, a company together, and that was Barrel. And so yeah, it's since 2006. We were still young, super young then. I was 23, Sihuk was 21, and still had a year of school left, and we just, hit the ground running and try to piece together as much work as we could from people we knew, or Craigslist posts, things like that. But yeah, that was the start of the journey.
Yeah, so Barrel seems to me like they're have a very specific focus in CPG and e-commerce. Um, how long did it take for you guys to find a focus, and how many times has that shifted over the years?
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I'm laughing because, like, it's been such a circuitous route to kind of get to positioning ourselves in a way that we feel good and confident about, and feel a bit more like it's grounded in something. And so we started off kind of being anything to anyone. We would do branding, web design, development. Like if somebody, I don't know, needed us to, kind of, I remember one client needed us to like run a job fair for them. So we'd like, do all the exhibit stuff, and we'd like put on a suit and like kind of stand the tables for them. Like whatever it was, like we just do what clients needed. But yeah, over time, like, we developed some specialties. Like for a while we were like winning every like cultural arts organization, doing their sites on WordPress, for example. And so, like, if you were like a anything to do with dance, like we would do their sites. And then we ended up one thing was, there was a period like in the early 2010s where we started winning a lot of these kind of like healthy lifestyle type of brands. And so we thought, oh, maybe this is like a way we can kind of differentiate and focus. So we thought for a while, oh, are we like a healthy lifestyle agency, and we just do like, healthy foods, like, outdoor living, whatever it is, and just kind of put it. But like we had no idea what like real positioning meant. Was like, okay, how, like, what does that really mean? You're just describing the, the mismatch of like portfolio pieces in some kind of cohesive way. But like what's the differentiation? Do we do our work any differently than another agency that does websites and design or whatever? And so we didn't quite understand that. And so yeah, like so there was some meandering there. We did end up going deeper into Shopify. So we went, okay, we get ecom, we get Shopify, and we built a lot of expertise around building websites in Shopify. So can we go deep there? And that was a good run, but like over time, a lot of other people ended up being able to do the same thing. And so there's less of a differentiation at that point. But along the way, one thing that we found was, the way we think about e-com, commerce, and marketing for consumer packaged goods, especially food and bev, personal care, skincare, beauty. Like there's something there's more depth we could go there. Like how should they think about commerce, especially because they're not just selling on their website. It's not pure like direct to consumer e-com. They have an omni-channel existence where they'd like to drive you know uh, traffic, customers to stores, brick and mortar stores. They like to, they're fine if customers are finding them on Amazon or other marketplaces. So that kind of got us down the path of, hey, there's more to the things that we can do to help our clients, and we can build real expertise around this. Like, what does it mean to help bridge the gap between like the retail experience and online? What does it mean to help clients connect directly with customers that they don't know are buying from them in store, through emails and SMS and things like that? So yeah, we started to focus more and more, and the deeper we went down, the more we realized we could be valuable and differentiated to prospective clients and our existing clients. So yeah, that's where it was like many years in the making, because we're always talking about this stuff, but it takes time to prove it out, have the case studies, and then have that confidence to really think about it. So yeah, it just a lot of it's materialized this year, where I think just we have like about a dozen or maybe a little bit more clients that we added this year alone that are very much in that CPG space. So I think that's it's the fruition of like all the work that we've been putting in over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Peter, that when you specialize, and that's basically what we're trying to do at Cobble Hill as well, you just get more, you get much more efficiency in the agency. You can level up the clients that you're working with, and you don't have to retrain your team on processes. Is there anything that you found though when specializing that is kind of a drawback?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there is that kind of when an opportunity comes, then you can do a good job on it, and then you're trying to be disciplined to the specialization or the position you're taking. And it's funny sometimes, like maybe it's an old muscle or something. You like try to make justifications for why it might still fit under your positioning. So there's that kind of mental gymnastics that just naturally happens to not turn away the business. I think that's like it's just a urge you just have to resist to some degree. But or also sometimes you gotta be okay with that and be like, okay, you know what, this is not gonna advance our positioning or depth in that specialization, but it's still a good project to have done. So I'd say it's that kind of back and forth thinking that comes through when you specialize. You just gotta get over it and deal with it on a case by case basis.
So now you have a Barrel Holdings, which is a holding company that has Barrel being one of the agencies that lives underneath that, and then you guys have BX Studio and Vaulted Oak and Bolster, Free Mode, and Catalog. Where did that when did that evolution start to take shape, and what's the goal of having a holding company?
Yeah, I mean, it started off very organically, and then it took more of a shape later on. So initially, this is about 15 years into the business. The As we were getting deeper and deeper into that Shopify ecosystem, we noticed, okay, like there's aspects of our, client roster just got a little bit unwieldy. So for example, like we had a bunch of WordPress clients that we were doing support and maintenance for. And then there were even some Shopify clients that were like, hey, like we're moving a little bit more up market. Like we need clients, that can support like the teams that we're staffing on these. So we like there are some that are just don't meet that minimum spend that we need them to spend with us. And so we're like, okay, maybe we should just kind of phase them out and refer them to someone else. But we added all the accounts up, and we're like, hey, this is not an insignificant number. There's actually enough to like seed a business. If all they focused on was support and maintenance. And so luckily one of our project managers who had been with us a long time, he was very interested in kind of running this new entity, and so we spun it out. Um, he became a part owner as well, and then that was the genesis of like Vaulted Oak. And just seeing that right off the bat, like it had two like impacts right away. One was like it freed up Barrel to just continue to grow in that Shopify focused direction with larger clients. And then secondly, like Vaulted Oak itself, like just ran those accounts way more efficiently, way more profitably than they were being run within Barrel. So just we saw that and we're like, hey, there's something to be, you know, taken notice of here, and maybe something to apply for other aspects of the business. And so not too long after that, Webflow was starting to pick up, and Barrel was just getting a lot of deal flow from Webflow. We were partners. Webflow was reaching out and like, hey, like you guys want to do more Webflow work? And we had just gone through this exercise with stripping WordPress stuff out, so we're like, we don't want to dilute the Shopify focus with Webflow. So that's where we thought, hey, let's just spin up another agency, and then find someone to run this, and then we'll just direct all the deal flow to Barrel, to this new agency. And that's where BX Studio was born. And we brought in Jacob. He had been working at a different agency, but he and I connected, and I thought I made the offer, and he was really excited to take it on. And he's done a great job of growing that business separately. So before we knew it, like over a span of a couple of years, we had 3 agency businesses that were kind of growing nicely, and like doing like just collectively, like 2 of them were running independently. I was still running Barrel, but then more and more as I was trying to help Vaulted Oak and BX and just thinking more about the portfolio as it was starting to take shape, I was like, hey, maybe there's a future where, I'm also not running Barrel. And just seeing how well like BX and Vaulted Oak were going, I'm like, hey, maybe someone else can run Barrel and do a great job too. And so that, kind of set us on a path where we I spoke to Lucas, and like we said, hey, like let's put a kind of 2-year timeline on succession, where he take over as CEO, and so we went down that path, and we finally executed it earlier this year, and so that's where Saywick and I were able to step out of Barrel and then set our sights on, hey, like let's build the holding company, and our next 10, 15, 20 years, let's make it so that it's about portfolio management. It's about M&A. It's about, helping to grow these businesses, but not having to run it day to day. And, doing the other kind of supplemental things to help these guys grow faster and faster. So that was like really the genesis. And, we really thought, hey, like in this format, we never have to think about like, let's not think about like exiting completely or selling something whole, but, this is more of a, our sandbox to, just incubate, acquire, turn around, or, scale different businesses, with an agency focus, and then see how that plays out.
So when you think about the operational side of the business and like systematizing processes, or even just company culture, does that get developed at the Barrel Holdings level, or does that get developed at each of the independent agency level?
Yeah, I think the a big part of it obviously is going to be dependent on the leaders of the agencies, because I think culture is really a reflection of like how the leaders show up day to day, how they conduct themselves, like the work that they're putting in, the standards they have for the type of work that goes on, or the performance of their employees. So like in picking these agency leaders, that's where I think initially the culture gets set, and then of course there are higher level aspects of like culture that we'll talk about. We have like, for example, we call it like the Barrel Holdings like fundamentals, and there are things like, look, we really care about like cost discipline, we really care about like driving value for clients, we really care a lot about aligning incentives, and just a lot of these, and being proactive with communication. So a lot of those things we drill in, but then we're also hiring agency leaders against that anyway. So there's a bit of an interplay there, like where I think it all first and foremost starts with like who we put in place, and then a lot of the culture flows from that.
So when you think about the business growth for each of those, are you visualizing each of them to, you know, have their own independent identity that lives separately and they continue to grow and scale at a disproportionate rate of the others and kind of just go with the flow there? Or do you have key goals set out for each of them that is a little bit more defined?
Yeah. I mean, with every business, one of the things we talk about is, hey, like what does it take to get to a point where you'd be attractive, acquisition target for someone else? Because that way we can kind of work back to what that means. And in our agency business, like I think you have to kind of cross that $5 million, $1 million EBITDA, $5 million revenue, $1 million EBITDA mark to kind of be considered a like a maybe a tuck-in acquisition, and then maybe get to 10 million revenue, 2 million EBITDA to be maybe something more than that. But so we'll kind of be like, hey, that's a goal. Those are goals that we want you guys to kind of get to. And what is that? What kind of structure does that mean growing into? What kind of infrastructure we need to build in? What kind of processes and systems we need to have in place. So it provides like a roadmap towards that growth. But of course, like the ones that are super early stage, you're just trying to get them to grow any kind of revenue early on to have a base. Just get to $1 million so that you can stabilize and have some kind of room to reinvest and grow. And then for those that are kind of beyond that, it's like, how do we start making the key hires and building out the infrastructure to get to that 5 million and then the $10 million hurdle.
You had a really interesting post. It was about kind of the flywheel of new business, right? This is pretty recently, and you were talking about inbound, outbound, your networking, just organically, stuff like that. I would imagine with different leadership under each of these agencies, there is a different everyone has kind of a different way that they operate, and potentially some are better at new business and some are stronger at more just from an operational standpoint. When you think of new business and creating that, do you always kind of think, hey, how can we cross pollinate some of these agencies with one client? There might be someone who needs branding, and then they come and utilize BX Studio for web or something like that. The new business like trajectory seems like there's more opportunities when you have multiple agencies, but also potentially a little bit more bifurcated where people feel like they're just getting handed off and shuffled around. How do you keep that consistent?
Yeah. It has to start first and foremost with like, are we doing the right thing and bringing maximum value for the client? So it's like as appealing as it might seem to be, like, oh, let's cross sell the hell out of every single relationship or engagement so that we can get all the agencies can get a piece. That that's kind of, it could actually be counterproductive in the long run if it's not the right kind of mix of services, or it's not the greatest experience or service we could give to the client. So in some cases it'll work out, in others it won't. I'll give you an example. Actually, like someone reached out to me. They were like, hey, it's a funny situation. Like we have Bolster on one side that were asking for a proposal, because Bolster can also do websites on Framer, and then they're like, on the other side, where another branding agency teamed up with BX. So they're like, if you had to choose, which one would you go with, right? And I just laid it out. I was like, hey, I think these are the strengths and some of the drawbacks of each, the trade-offs you're gonna have to make with either of the choices. Just gave him the honest assessment. Like at no point did I think, oh, like let's cut out the branding agency that's not ours and then try to get Bolster and BX to work together. Like that didn't even cross my mind. It was more like, this is Like this is the way that I think you're gonna get the best out of each. And so I laid it out, and yeah, they picked one that I think it was a good fit for them.
So how many acquisitions has Barrel Holdings done?
One, I mean, earlier this year that we made one that was catalog. So I mean, like the goal is, we've been, there's been a lot of activity in the sense like we look at a lot of businesses every week, have a lot of discussions. I think, yeah, there'll probably be some LOIs in the coming weeks as well, and so like it's ramping up. It has been ramping up, but yeah, right now we have one under our belts, which was a great experience. Catalog was design kind of one of those like design subscription businesses that had a good run in like 21 to 23, but like started to kind of feel the negative effects of like just lack of startup funding in the ecosystem, and then also just the intense competition of the design subscription model. So just yeah we were able to get it at a good price. We thought there were still some ways to evolve the service offering so that it would be a better value for the clientele that it was serving. So yeah, it's still very much a turnaround situation right now. But yeah, at least we were able to take a company that was not doing too well and at least stabilize it. And then I think there's a lot of upside that we can try to engineer.
What have you found kind of like integrating that and, like from an acquisition standpoint, it always seems fairly complicated to integrate someone into your own kind of company culture. What are kind of your biggest learnings so far, and how would you do it differently with the next go round?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was actually just because the team, they actually had some pretty lean and clean systems in place that it wasn't actually a huge lift. Like obviously we had to redo their kind of the way they do bookkeeping, a lot of the finance ops stuff we had to redo, a lot of the HR stuff we had to replace. But other than that, yeah, like everything else, because we're not integrating into an existing team or culture, like it was still a standalone agency. We didn't have as big of a lift. I say the thing that we most learned from that was, have a much deeper like talent pipeline for folks who could come in and take over as the main operator, the agency leader, because like we interview a lot of folks, but like just for whatever reasons, like just couldn't finalize a candidate earlier. So by the time we knew we were going to close, like we still hadn't found like a CEO to take over after closing. So it was a bit of a scramble. I mean, it worked out. We got someone we really like in place, but I think it would have been nice to have that person, during like much earlier, so that come like during due diligence even, or like maybe even like right around closing, so that there's that kind of post close like transition period where we can get a lot more value out of like the founder who just sold. And so yeah, that was kind of the learning, was like, hey, be more prepared on that front. And I think since then I've been trying to like fill up my board of like list of people that could be really good operators to take over for the next business we acquire.
I'm interested in the discipline that it takes to write a weekly newsletter. How do you get that done? Like to me, it seems like you cover a wide range of topics. You have an actual email that is completely unique content, and then most of the time you're linking to a blog post that, I mean, at least 3,000 characters, it seems like to me. Where do you find the time? I think you have 3 kids. How do you find the time to do that? Especially, now I would imagine with Barrel Holdings, you've opened up your time to spend more on that, but there's an incredible amount of discipline that comes with writing, and you get so much out of writing. I find every time I write, but I just have such a difficult time making it part of my daily habits.
Yeah, I think what's been helpful for me was trying to think of it as like, what's the system that kind of at least gets me to that minimum level of activity every week. And so, yeah, the newsletter has been good in that it is that kind of, structure every week where I know that by Sunday night, ideally, I've completed writing the newsletter and it's scheduled to go out Monday night. So like I know that's always like on the back of my mind of like, okay, Monday it sends at the same time every Monday. So, and then I don't want to have to think about it after Sunday. So, like that's my kind of period. I have basically that week to kind of get something done. Right. And then, I think having the structure, like repeatable structure, has been really helpful. I don't have to think about that every week where it's like, okay, I always curate, a couple articles or pieces of content that I've consumed, and then just have some commentary on that. So like come Monday, um, you know, I'm like whatever I'm reading, I'm like, oh, this looks good. Like, like this looks good. Like I'll just kind of start bookmarking and kind of save what I'm going to read at the end of the week. And then like just I always commit to posting at least like 3 to 4 times on LinkedIn as well. And that drives a lot of like, topics. And I have an Evernote where I just anytime an idea comes, I'll just start jotting down some notes. So I have like a backlog of like, you know, like ideas that I'm like, oh, I never wrote about this before, but I'll revisit it and here's some thoughts on it. So I can always pick up those things and then just write as I need to. Because remember, it's just in many ways, it's like, yeah, it's like working out because you're like, all right, like you have this exercise, and this exercise, and you just have sets. You just got to do it, and you just got to do the reps and just get through it, and then it just stacks up, right? So I've got it to a point where like I don't even think about it. I'm like, okay, like it comes Saturday. All right, like all right, kids are just chilling. They're playing with their toys by themselves. Okay, that's like gives me like 15 minutes. Let me just go, read that article, write a little piece on it on my newsletter. Okay, and then come back later, do that again, and then for uh, agency journey, which is like my longer form piece that I write once a month. I just know I gotta start outlining that like on a Wednesday or Thursday, and then have like a few 30-minute blocks, maybe an hour on Sunday to just edit it. And like, I know it's going to get done. So I just work backwards from that and just make sure I just hit those reps. That's it. Like, it just, yeah, get through that exercise. And, yeah, it's been great. Like, I just go, like, I'm just going for consistency. I'm not too precious about, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm like, yeah, just, put the reps in. And then over time, it's gotten easier because, like I've obviously developed, just ways to think about things or word things quickly, and things just flow a lot more naturally with the practice. So yeah, I think it's like coming on 5 years of like sending a newsletter every week in a row. So yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the interesting posts you had was resisting like the urge to be complacent in business, right? And I would imagine that having that kind of that burning in the back of your mind that you need to finish something maintains a little bit of like a healthy paranoia, right? For continuing to kind of uh evolve your approach. And it also just gives you, even if no one reads it, it's a sense of like your personal journal or like a sense of reflection that you're able to kind of work things out. Do you keep a journal too, or is this kind of
Dude,
your journal?
yeah, I have like a handwritten journal where yeah, yeah, and I mean, my handwriting is terrible, but like the more I look at it, it's a little bit like it's a lot more like a self-talk kind of thing. It's kind of like more reflections on things I'm grateful for, and like just kind of trying to psych myself up for like a big week or something like that. And just like if I'm going through anything tough, just kind of being like, all right, like it's actually not that bad. So it's a lot of like yeah, that's it serves that purpose in terms of yeah, how I use it.
How do you take a lot of these articles that you've read or these books that you've read and evolve, yourself and your approach to running the agency or just your personal growth. But I'm interested too on like how does it evolved recently, like your client relationships? Like what's the development there? Like are you still as involved in client relationships, and how often are you talking to your clients, and how often are you offering advice and picking up the phone, and what are some interesting ways that you've evolved just through writing about this stuff and what you've learned?
Yeah. Um, well, just to the point about clients, there's a lot less interaction now just because I'm out of the day to day of the agency side of the business. But I mean, I still catch up with all of our agency leaders on like all the client relationships across the agencies. And so, just when I hear those things and kind of, read between the lines of like how that relationship is going, there's always, yeah, yeah, definitely like, I'm influenced or kind of, there's good ideas that might come from a lot of the readings that I do. And so, yeah, just trying to filter those as much as possible. But at the end of the day, like it goes back to, the thing about, and the thing I've learned over time is like, you can get really overwhelmed with content, and have this like recency bias about everything, right? So it's like the last thing you read is what like kind of shapes how you think about things. And I found myself falling into that trap a lot. And over time, I was like, you know what? It's so important to just have some pillars of like beliefs or kind of values or whatever fundamentals you want that can come back to and are likely to be timeless and more enduring. And so you know, it's yeah, it's gotten to be more about that. So, when I, even if I read something, I'll be like, I put it through the lens of like, okay, like how does this actually, like support some of the pillars that we have, versus, being kind of, going into like a whiplash of like, oh, like now HBR says this is the way you should talk to customers or whatever, and then thinking that's the right way. There's no, yeah, I think it's really having confidence in the belief systems and also the learnings that you've developed over a longer period of time.
What are your like mental models then, like in terms of how you evaluate decision making and um, what you think about? I mean, it sounds like you've created some core principles for yourself and how you think about things. How do you then evaluate them, and what mental models do you use?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot like yeah, mental models. You want to have a large library of things that you can kind of call upon when needed. But that's why I'm like, it's more kind of thinking about the it's always whenever there's a situation, it's always like taking a step back and kind of trying to understand the situation at a higher from a higher perspective. So let's say you have a client challenge and it's kind of like, hey, like let's take a step back, like what are we actually trying to do, like what are they, what does the client really want, what's kind of the ideal outcome for us and for them, like what is a win-win situation, but also like, hey, like do we actually need to do anything? There's always like questions around like, hey, do you necessarily need to be proactive or you need to be patient? So, just continue to like look at the problem from many different angles, as is like one way that we've like, come into situations and try to, you know, figure out a path. But, I think it just lends to more, I guess, of a nuanced approach. Cause like, I think, in my younger days, it was like, whenever something was wrong, like there's that default to like, all right, let's do something about it. You just kind of dive in and try to like, you know, like brute force something into like what you think is a solution. But many times you can just take a step back and, there's like more and more situations where you're like doing nothing is actually okay, and that like it resolves itself. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything, you can just kind of let it play out. And then there's other parts where it's like, wow, we can see that a mile coming a mile away, we should actually act now before it gets too late. So yeah, you just it's I think it's like you get to be a little bit more, I guess, like strategic or whatever you want to call it, with situations, if you're able to just think come at it with a lot of different angles.
I wonder if that is like maturity or getting like older, or if that's more of like the time we live in now, right? And how high frequency it is. I mean, I imagine when you started the agency almost 20 years ago, right? When you think about every client needs to be happy. You need to win this project in order to kind of make payroll to, I'm thinking about Cobble Hill. It's like, it just seemed like I was just working so hard and, had to keep every client happy. But there is now just getting older, obviously, it chills you out a bit and you have more perspective. But I also don't know if it's like the time we live in too, right? If there is a little bit of just this uh not complacency, but a little bit more of like it's gonna be okay type feeling, where we've been through a pandemic recently, we've been through some just crazy stuff, and the the scale of what an agency does is kind of just part of the fabric of life.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great point. I personally think it's yeah, part of it is probably like, you yeah, you see a lot the experience aspect of it. There's probably a lot of like the yeah, like you gain there's like a pattern matching aspect to it. You see a lot of things so you kind of know what to anticipate, and so like you're not kind of in that panic mode where like, oh crap, like never had this before, and then all of a sudden you're like, in a downward spiral of like doubt and uncertainty and fear. But yeah, also, but then it's funny because I've actually worked with some younger folks that are leading our agencies, and like I'm like they're way better than I was at their age in dealing with a lot of this stuff, and I mean, and I don't know if it's necessarily times because I also come across folks who are super reactive and super high strung, and it's just anxiety after anxiety of like kind of things, and so yeah, I don't know, like I don't know a clear answer, but like it's I do feel like yeah, experience helps, but also like the demeanor and the kind of the yeah, the characteristics that the person brings to the table also impact a lot of it.
Shifting gears just a little, how are you personally using AI for kind of what you do from a day-to-day standpoint?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. I mean, I love it's like you know, especially with on the M&A side of things, because I entered it kind of as a noob, like I kind of read a few books on it or whatever, but like there's a lot of different things that I just still have questions on, right? I'm like, okay, like hey, there's and that's the beautiful thing about AI because like it can um, take concepts, it could do calculations, it could do all those things at once. So I'll have a lot of convos with ChatGPT every day about like, hey, we're looking at this kind of company with these kind of characteristics, and we're thinking about this kind of a deal structure. How would you critique that, or like what are some things that I need to watch out for? And it's cool, and we get some feedback on that, and then you could kind of tell to change this that or that variable, and then see what that happens. So those have been super helpful. And then like you know we're anytime we're creating any kind of artifact or checklist or whatever, it's like you run that through AI just to get anything that we missed is helpful. It's been great for recruitment. Like whenever we have like you know uh, job description stuff that we need spun up, like we'll have a few lines that we put in, and then get a much more built out one. And then also as we like record transcripts from interviews, and then also like have them run those transcripts through like a scorecard to get like, oh, is this a good fit or not? Like it just saves a lot of time, and so like we're always looking for ways, like it's like how to be more efficient using AI as much as possible. And it part of the things that help is Saywick and I we're basically in a startup mode again, right? We're at the holding company level. It's really the two of us and a couple of other support folks, but like we don't have a big team, and we're doing a lot of the things, wearing a lot of different hats, and so we want to be as efficient as possible. So AI has been a big help in that regard.
What about the web developers? Are they utilizing AI for their code now? And do you think that that's been helpful and made you guys more efficient?
I think so. Like I know, yeah, like on the barrel side, especially like early adopters of like leveraging Copilot and kind of using that for stuff. I don't know, like stuff like Webflow. I'd say like you know it's already kind of a low no code platform anyway. So I don't know how much, like maybe, yeah, for some of the like custom JavaScript stuff now, we can do more of that without having to bring in a JavaScript expert for some of these things. But yeah, I'd say, it's been more beneficial probably on like generative content, like the content side of things. Like I know for a lot of these design mockups where you got to put products, in like interesting situations as part of like a design mockup. Like that's been useful. AI has been useful for those things as well. So yeah, countless uses. I think it's been a net positive for services firms, but at the same time, like yeah, you gotta show that it's valuable for the clients. And I think, yeah, I think there's gonna be situations where clients know that it's easier to create these things, and they're not gonna want to pay that much as well.
So last question, what's like what's the one book that you feel like uh, helped you develop as a person and as a business owner?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, there's okay. The cop out answer is like, look, like no one book, just because like it's the culmination of reading all these books that makes every subsequent book richer and like more valuable. So that's like the cop out answer. Say if I had to just pick one book that's been, that I've kind of recommended and suggested to folks, just from like I think it's broadly applicable and has a lot of good lessons, is a book called Straight Line Leadership. It's by, oh, I forgot his last name. It's Dustin, like dude, starts with the D, but like it's yeah, Straight Line Leadership is the book. It's a very like in your face, like kind of stop feeling sorry for yourself. Do the thing you got to do. It's it's a very very like yeah, kick yourself in the butt kind of a book. But like I remember reading that and being like, wow, like so much of like my issues come from just living in fear slash self doubt in a lot of things, and I just need to, I just need to be that straight line person who like just needs to do what it takes to get from A to B, and like that was a big unlock for me. It was like, wow, like it's not that I lack the knowledge or the skills or the capabilities, but it's a mindset thing. So I'd say like that was a really impactful book for me.
Have you ever read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer?
And nah.
You have to read that one. It's good. It'll help you kind of get over that hump as well.
Nice.
Well, Peter, it's been awesome having you on. Where can people find you online?
Yeah. So my website, peterkang.com. I have a weekly newsletter there. And then, if you're in the agency business, agencyhabits.com, which is where we take our learnings from Barrel Holdings and we try to distill them into different articles there, and a newsletter there as well.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
All right. Thanks for having me.